Picture this. It's the summer of 1999. On the desolate, icy peaks of the Himalayas, two nations, both newly armed with nuclear weapons, are at war. This was the Kargil conflict, a short, incredibly brutal fight that brought India and Pakistan to the very brink of a full-scale, maybe even nuclear, catastrophe.
And that's really the heart of what we're digging into here. You see, the Kargil War wasn't just another border skirmish. Oh no, this was a calculated, secret invasion at unbelievably high altitudes. It pushed military limits, totally shredded diplomatic ties, and for the very first time, it brought the terrifying idea of a nuclear exchange into a live shooting war. So how in the world did this all kick off? Well, it didn't start with a big explosion. It started with a secret, a deception that managed to completely blindside one of the biggest armies in the world.
The timing here is just wild. In February of 1999, the leaders of India and Pakistan are literally shaking hands signing this big peace deal called the Lahore Declaration. But at the exact same time, the Pakistani military is launching Operation Badr, secretly sending thousands of its soldiers across the line to capture strategic peaks on the Indian side. And the craziest part? The infiltration wasn't spotted for months, and it wasn't caught by some high-tech satellite. It was a couple of local shepherds who saw them and reported it.
Now, to really get why this was such a huge deal, you've got to understand the line of control, the LOC. It's basically the ceasefire line that became the unofficial border after the 1971 war. In the Kargil area, this line snakes through some of the most insane mountain terrain on the planet. And here's the key. If you control the peaks, you control everything. It's like being on top of a castle wall, looking down on all the roads and supply lines for miles. It's a massive tactical advantage. So at first, Pakistan's official story was, hey, it's not us, it's independent Kashmiri freedom fighters. But that story just didn't hold up. And this quote from a high-ranking Pakistani general, Shahid Aziz, basically confirms it. He says, there were no mujahideen, our soldiers were made to occupy barren ridges. It makes it crystal clear, these weren't militants, these were regular soldiers from the Pakistani army. When India discovered what was happening, it triggered a massive military response. But this wasn't going to be a normal fight. This was war in one of the most hostile places on Earth. Just let this number sink in for a second. 5,500 meters. That's over 18,000 feet up. We're talking higher than any mountain in the continental US or Europe. At these altitudes, just breathing is a struggle, let alone fighting a war. So you're not just fighting the enemy, you're literally fighting the mountain itself. Soldiers were dealing with severe oxygen deprivation, which messes with your mind and body. The temperatures dropped to almost minus 50 Celsius. And the terrain? Steep, jagged cliffs that were a nightmare to climb, but super easy to defend. It was an almost impossible task for the Indian forces trying to take back the peaks. India's answer was a huge two-part counterattack. On the ground, you had Operation Vijay, which involved moving something like 200,000 troops into the area. And in the sky, you had Operation Sagar, where the Indian Air Force had to figure out how to even conduct airstrikes on tiny targets nestled among the world's tallest mountains. So, as these brutal battles for single mountaintops were going on, the risk of a much bigger, and potentially nuclear war started to grow. And that got everyone's attention, all the way to Washington. The intensity of this war was perfectly captured by the battle for Tiger Hill. This became the symbolic fight of the whole conflict. It was one of the highest, most heavily defended peaks. Taking it back was a huge turning point. And for the first time ever in that part of the world, the war was being broadcast on live TV. People in India were watching the battles unfold, and it absolutely electrified the country. The war also created legends. This famous line, "Yeh dil mange more," it means "the heart wants more," was the code phrase radioed back by an army captain named Vikram Batra after his unit captured a critical peak. It was actually from a Pepsi commercial, but he used it as his success signal, and it became this incredible symbol of the soldier spirit. Sadly, Captain Batra was killed in action just a few days later, taking another peak. While these incredible stories of heroism were happening on the ground, a much, much darker question was being asked in war rooms from Delhi to DC. Remember, this was the first direct fight between India and Pakistan after they both officially became nuclear powers just the year before. The big question was, could this thing go nuclear? And this was not just talk. It got very real, very fast. On May 31st, Pakistan's foreign secretary made a pretty chilling statement, saying they could use any weapon in their arsenal. Everyone knew what that meant. Then, U.S. intelligence reported they'd seen Pakistan moving its nuclear warheads closer to the border. The whole world suddenly sat up and paid very close attention.
International pressure started to pile on Pakistan, especially from the United States. President Bill Clinton got personally involved, and he later wrote that he was just baffled by what Pakistan was doing. They had just signed a peace deal, and now this? As you can imagine, almost the entire world sided with India, saying Pakistan was the one that broke the rules by crossing the LOC.
So, with things going badly on the battlefield and facing total diplomatic isolation, Pakistan's Prime Minister, Nawaz Sharif, flew to Washington on July 4th, of all days. He met with President Clinton and basically agreed to pull all of his forces back. That meeting pretty much sealed the deal. The war was coming to an end.
The fighting officially stopped on July 26th, but the impact of those 2 violent months on the roof of the world would change the politics and military thinking in South Asia for decades. You can tell how contested this war still is just by looking at the casualty numbers. India's official number is 527 soldiers killed, but for Pakistan, the numbers are all over the place. The army chief at the time, General Musharraf, said it was 357. The Prime Minister, Nawaz Sharif, later claimed it was over 4,000. That huge gap shows you that the information war kept going long after the shooting stopped. The end result for both countries couldn't have been more different. For India, Kargil was seen as a huge victory, both militarily and diplomatically. It sparked a massive wave of patriotism, the government was easily re-elected, and it actually improved relations with the U.S. But for Pakistan, it was a total disaster. The country was isolated, the economy took a hit, and inside the country there was this huge, ugly blame game over the humiliating withdrawal. And that blame game had a shocking ending. Just a few months after the war, the guy who planned the whole Kargil invasion, General Pervez Musharraf, launched a military coup. He kicked out Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif, blaming him for caving to international pressure. So the Kargil War directly led to a decade of military dictatorship in Pakistan. So when all was said and done, the Kargil War put the border back where it was. But it left behind this really scary lesson. It proved that even when 2 countries have nuclear weapons, it doesn't guarantee they won't fight a conventional war. So it leaves us with this huge question, one that's still relevant today. What did we really learn from this war on the roof of the world? And how do we stop it from happening again?